This video will be focusing on the Taisho democracy, the growth of liberal values during the Taisho era in Japan, and the two-party system. This video will address why the two-party system was introduced as opposed to constitutional monarchy and evidence that Japan was moving steadily towards democracy during the Taisho period. The Taisho period lasted from 1912 to 1926, right after the Meiji period and before the Showa period. It started when Prince Yoshihito was enthroned after the death of his father, Emperor Mutsuhito. Well-known events that happened during the period include World War I, the Great Kanto earthquake, and of course, when the Kenseikai and Seiyukai captured nearly all the Diet seats in the 1924 spring election. Before the Taisho democracy, the Meiji constitution had already established the constitutional monarchy in which the emperor rules Japan together with the Diet and oligarchy, who become the general after growing old. The general set up the Seiyukai by a man called Ito Hirobumi and the Kenseikai by a man called Katsura Taro. For those who are still confused, the Seiyukai is the right-wing conservative party and the Kenseikai is a left-wing liberal party. The Seiyukai believed in protecting the old social order, while the Kenseikai believed in social change to bring about a more egalitarian society. The two-party system was most likely set up because of Western influence. Europe and America had a democratic political system, and Japan, wanting to keep up with Western imperialism, realized the importance of political freedom and so started to move towards democratization. Of course, this explanation is open to debate. When Thorstein Veblen, an American economist and sociologist, visited Japan in 1915, he saw an intellectual similarity and psychological equivalence between Japanese and Westerners. Consequently, he predicted, as Japan became more modern, its citizens would turn their backs on the spirit of old Japan and embrace the ideals, ethical values, and principles that pervaded the advanced nations of the globe. In turn, the foundation of comparable values would support a superstructure of political institutions similar to those found in Europe and North America. When John Dewey, an American philosopher, visited Japan 4 years later, he confirmed that liberalism is in the air. Here are 5 clues to show that Japanese politics had indeed taken on a more liberal direction in the Taisho period. Clue number 1. Kato Takaaki, head of the Kenseikai, was appointed by the general as Japan's prime minister. The general was forced to appoint him because they felt that he had a lot of public support. After all, the citizens wanted more political freedom as opposed to the constitutional monarchy, and the Kenseikai won the majority of seats in the Diet. This appointment of Kato Takaaki meant the shift of Japanese politics towards democracy and shows that even though the oligarchy chose the prime minister, the choices of the public was starting to matter. Kato Takaaki served as Japan's prime minister for 2 terms until the end of the Taisho era in 1926. Clue number 2. Yoshino Sakuzo's idea of Minpon Shugi. Yoshino Sakuzo was the leading advocate of parliamentary liberalism. According to him, the government should protect the people's welfare and respect the emperor's sovereignty at the same time. His idea of Minpon Shugi was a people-oriented idea, not a democratic one. He reasoned that the people should be the primary judges of whether the government was functioning in a responsible manner. This idea was well accepted in Japan despite being radical because he reconciled the appearance of democratic parliamentary practices with a constitution that lodged sovereignty in a semi-divine emperor, thus making it possible for Japanese to honor their own imperial tradition while participating in an inevitable world trend, the emergence of a circle of advanced nations bound together by the spirit of democracy. What this really means is that the Japanese were conforming to the ways of the world, following a global trend. In a way, the political system still remained as a constitutional monarchy, combining the authority of both the emperor and the democratic system. Everything was copied from the Western world down to economy and politics, and Japan had to put up an image so that when they stood up with the others, she would be considered enlightened by the Western powers, an achievement of parity with the Western government. As mentioned before, in order to prove herself as a significant world power, Japan had to conform to the ways of the Western world and prove that she was just like the others. Clue number 3. The formulation of the organ theory. Organ in this context refers to parts like the organs in a body and not to the musical instrument. This theory legitimated the emergence of party cabinets in Japan and emphasized the separation of the emperor from the Diet. The organ theory meant that each part of the government should function equally, properly and independently from the other parts and yet work together so as to help keep the Japanese body politic healthy. The Diet did not depend on the emperor for its power but existed as an organ representative of the people. From this, one can see that liberalism was in the air because the direction of the Diet came from the people and not the emperor, meaning that the needs of the population were being taken into consideration. civilization. Clue number 4, the emergence of the liberals and political left. Right-wing people are the conservatives and nationalists, while the left-wing are the liberals who sympathize with socialism or have slight socialist tendencies. The political left upheld the dignity of the individual, prized freedom of expression, advocated the equality of the sexes, and welcomed greater popular participation in politics and in the creation of cultural norms. Most liberal commentators in Japan welcomed the arrival of the party government. As a group, they did not wish to repudiate the Meiji Constitution, but during the Taisho period, most did favor the modification of political institutions and practices so as to permit the liberal vision of modernity to prevail. Clue number 5, the dominance of liberal political parties. In the beginning, Kenseikai were under a different name, but after merging and compromising with different parties, they became a very big party and called themselves Kenseikai Minseito. Before merger, the political party dominating was Seiyukai because the conservatives and generals supported that, but as the oligarchy started dying, more parties rose up to dominate the government. Kenseikai tended to keep close watch over economic spending, favored government intervention to help solve social problems, and advocated cooperating with the great powers to police the international scene. Their dominance over social issues encouraged favorable comparisons with the democratic states of the West and lent credence to Dewey's observation that liberalism was filling the air. From these 5 points, one can conclude that liberalism was a major development in Japanese politics during the Taisho democracy from 1912 to 1926 due to Western influence and Japan's need for political freedom. For more information on this topic, do read the notes titled Japan in the New Century, New Awakening, New Modernities.